guys, we are putting this video together. My son really wanted to do a YouTube video, and so I agreed to do that with him. We don't have good equipment or expertise in this, but we figured we would give it a shot. So I'm curious what you think when we're done. Let us know. But both of us have a passion for cars, and he has a passion for Legos, and so we thought we'd try to incorporate some of that stuff as well. So you want to race and draw a picture of a car on the board? So I'm an engineer by trade, and I like to take just a really practical look at how we think about things as consumers, be analytical about it. And so we're going to look at actually not this question. This is the gas versus EV question, which I feel like has been well covered in various aspects. But instead, we are going to be thinking about the comparison between a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle versus an electric vehicle. And more specifically, we're talking about a battery electric vehicle. So to be EV or not to be EV, that is the question. And I think there's a lot of confusion in this space about comparing a plug-in hybrid versus a regular battery electric. And I don't think there's been any videos that have really done a good job of answering this question or thinking through all the implications that are involved when we think about which of those makes the most sense in our circumstance.
A lot of people that I know are considering an electric vehicle for their next car. Surveys show the same thing, and they probably should be. Electric vehicles are fun to drive, and you can save money on gas. But there are trade-offs to make no matter which way we go, and it's good to understand what these trade-offs are. A lot of the concerns with EVs relate to whether our grid can handle the load and whether there are sufficient charging stations. I'm not too worried about either of these issues, as they're startup issues that I think our country can solve. But there are a lot of challenges with EVs, and that starts with the chemistry and physics. Looking at the periodic table, you can see that we are using one of the most unstable electron-rich elements, lithium. Many people assume that battery technology will get significantly better in the coming years. While I think we will be able to make gains, I'm not sure that they will be as dramatic as people are hoping for. Batteries have been around for a really long time, and there's only so far we can push things on a weight and volume basis. In fact, because cobalt used in lithium batteries is hard to source and nickel is expensive, some of the cheaper vehicles have moved to iron phosphate batteries, which are less energy dense. I'll have my son explain it better using Lego.
Let's assume that this one Lego brick represents the energy of 5 gallons of gasoline. We'll hold 15 gallons in our gas car. It would take over 30 times that volume for the equivalent energy in lithium batteries in the electric vehicle. It is twice as bad if we look at it on a weight basis, and that's the best battery technology we have. This is the reason that electric motorcycles haven't taken off. It is difficult to hide the weight and volume in such a small vehicle. Airplanes are even worse. Carrying all that weight makes it very impractical. But this direct energy comparison is a little bit unfair. Electric vehicles are much better at converting energy to power. An internal combustion engine might only be 30% efficient, as much of the energy goes in the heat and frictional losses. An electric vehicle could be 90% efficient, so remove 2/3 of the bricks to compensate. This improves the comparison significantly, as it is now only 13 times the volume, but is still considerably heavier.
So to make this more concrete, we'll look at some real world examples. So for our plug-in hybrid vehicle, we'll select the Toyota RAV4 Prime. And for our battery electric vehicle, we'll use the most popular model on the market, which is the Tesla Model Y. And then we'll look at taking some road trips
To go to my grandpa's in Denver.
from Chicago, and also Chicago to St. Louis and Chicago to Indianapolis, to give us a little mix of long trips and short trips.
Let's take a closer look at comparing our plug-in hybrid electric vehicle versus our battery electric vehicle. The Tesla Model Y weighs in at 4,400 pounds and has a range of 330 miles. The RAV4 Prime weighs similarly 4,300 pounds, but has nearly double the range at 600 miles. Confirming our earlier assumptions about weight and volume, its battery is about 1/5 the size of the Tesla's, giving it an all-electric range of 42 miles, but adding to the weight. They are both all-wheel drive and have similar 0 to 60 mile per hour acceleration times. The obvious difference between these cars is that one has an internal combustion engine and a transmission, while the other does not. This certainly reduces the complexity on the Model Y. However, both have a lot of parts in common. Both have structural frames, both have body panels, headlights, seats, glass and windows, mirrors, infotainment systems, trim panels, controls, wheels, brakes, etc. The RAV4 includes a spare tire. The Model Y doesn't make room for one. The EV also needs a heating system, either resistive electric or heat pump, and they require a cooling system for the batteries. This consumes power to keep the batteries cool on hot days. Don't leave your Model Y parked at the Phoenix airport during the summer. You may come back to a drained battery. One thing I find deceptive about electric cars is their advertised range. Electric vehicles are most efficient at a slow speed of, say, around 25 miles an hour, while gas vehicles usually find their sweet spot closer to 60 miles an hour. An EV's range can drop considerably at higher speeds. If you're going on a long trip, you'll either need to drive slower or recharge more frequently. Additionally, the batteries are very slow charging when they're very empty or very full. Manufacturers recommend charging close to 80% when you're on a road trip because that's the portion of the battery that can charge quickly. Most drivers don't run under 10%, so that leaves about 70% of the battery's capacity for long-range use. For the Model Y, that drops the 330-mile range down to 230. And that doesn't account for drops from an aging battery or wintertime driving. Let's talk about that. Ford recently recommended that F-150 Lightning drivers reduce heat usage during the winter to lessen their impact on range. While heat is a natural byproduct of an internal combustion engine, an EV has to consume battery power to generate heat, and these systems are usually going to struggle in the northern U.S. or Canada. You probably won't be too comfortable driving your electric vehicle in 0-degree weather, which is not that uncommon in Chicago. If you see an EV driver bundled up in winter clothes, you know why. Everyone knows batteries don't last forever. Just look at your cell phone. Aging batteries also lead to higher depreciation on electric vehicles. There comes a day when an integral, expensive part of the vehicle suddenly no longer works. Because a battery replacement is so expensive, the car essentially becomes worthless at this point. Plug-ins have more smaller systems, so replacing any one of them can be less expensive. Depending on your personality, another big downside of EVs is the planning involved. It seems like every time I get into my wife's car, it is nearly out of gas. She does not like to plan ahead and just wants to get in the car and go. Road trips require planning, as does staying at a hotel or a friend's apartment that doesn't necessarily have charging available. A plug-in hybrid gives you the option to run on gas when getting a charge isn't an option. Being able to run on gas might also be handy if you want to pull a trailer, hitch up a luggage rack, or strap your snowboard on the roof. Okay, let's look at some trip comparisons. For both the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle and the battery electric vehicle, I would expect that the vast majority of people's miles will be all electric, simply driving to and from work or around town. Both types of cars could save you, over $1,000 in gas annually. But what about trips? Our family lives in Illinois while my parents are in Colorado. Driving from Chicago to Denver is right at 1,000 miles. To keep things as generic as possible, I used Electrify America's charging stations along the way, which most any EV could use. Our first leg runs us from Chicago, 247 miles to Williamsburg, Iowa. Hopefully a fast charger is available and we can add 66 kilowatt hours in 19 minutes. We'd pay 43 cents per kilowatt hour for this recharge, which comes to $28. We'll march on 217 miles to Council Bluffs, Iowa, and do the same. Then 225 miles to Lexington, Nebraska, where the charge is only 32 cents, again spending about 20 minutes. Another 243 miles gets us to Fort Morgan, Colorado, but it's not likely we could get a fast charger here. We'll add 73 kilowatt hours in 40 minutes. 81 more miles and we are to Denver. If you were counting, we made 4 charging stops that took 1.6 hours. Assuming we drove 65 miles per hour to extend our range, we could complete the trip in 17 hours. And we paid $109 for recharging. By comparison, the RAV4 Prime could make this trip 3.5 hours faster by driving faster and having fewer stops, and it would cost about $10 more for the fuel compared to the Tesla. I think most of us would gladly pay that difference for the significant time savings. We also have family in Indianapolis. So let's take a look at a shorter trip, one from Chicago to Indy, which is about 180 miles between them. That is well within the range of the Model Y, so we could drive a bit faster. One would simply need to recharge 55 kilowatt hours before heading home. On a fast charger, this would take only 15 minutes and cost about $23. For the same trip, the RAV4 would consume a bit over 5 gallons of gas. At $3.50 per gallon, the trip would cost $18, which is actually less than the cost of operating the Tesla. And lastly, we'll take a look at a trip from Chicago to St. Louis, a distance of 300 miles. With the Model Y, we'd probably be wise to make a stop in Springfield, Illinois to recharge, taking 17 minutes and costing $26. But let's assume we were able to find a free public charger in St. Louis, so we don't have to spend anything else. Comparatively, the RAV4 would complete the trip about 40 minutes faster, and we'd spend $30 in gas. Okay, let's do a quick summary comparison of the plug-in hybrid versus battery electric. As we saw from our trip information, the cost per mile of these cars is very similar. Presumably, most miles would be powered by home charging, which is probably only a third of the price of gas, at least currently. I should say that some Tesla owners do have access to free charges on their network, which can help. Where I live, EV plates are $100 more per year, offsetting some of the savings. So we'll call that category a tie. For long trips, the RAV4 can get places significantly faster because it has a lot more range and can do 5-minute gas fill-ups. I wouldn't want to add over 3.5 hours to my trip to Denver, which leads us to marketing truthfulness. The EV ranges are overstated because doing fast charges really only uses 70% of the battery's capacity, which also means that planning ahead is more important with an EV than just getting in the car and going. Winter driving also consumes range and does not heat as effectively as an IC engine. So we'll give those categories to the plug-in hybrid electric. But an EV's maintenance should be a lot less without the engine. Then again, some of this is offset by things like more expensive tires that need replaced more frequently and more wear and tear on the 12-volt battery. But we'll give the edge to the EV. Without the engine and transmission, there are fewer moving parts in the battery electric vehicle, and it's one of the big drawbacks of a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. We've got the complication of two systems. Thankfully, Toyota has been perfecting this for years on the Prius, so the RAV4 Prime makes me less nervous. A poorly executed plug-in electric vehicle like the Chrysler Pacifica will probably be a complexity nightmare. So we'll give that to the EV. There's also the thrill of driving something that can powerfully accelerate with so little noise. Most anyone will tell you that an EV is fun to drive, taking that category as well. But as EVs age, they approach the day when the battery will stop working. And with the exception of some hard-to-get Teslas, EVs depreciate faster than IC engine cars. It's probably best to stick with one whose battery is still under warranty. Lastly, we have cost. The Model Y comes in at $67,000, while the RAV4 Prime tags in at $43,000. For that price difference, we could buy both the RAV4 Prime and a Ford Maverick and still have money to spare. Looking at these comparisons, you would have a hard time convincing me that the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle is not worth considering over the battery electric vehicle. So that you don't think I'm being too hard on battery electric vehicles, I think there are times when they make a lot of sense. BEVs can work great as dedicated commuter cars, preferably in moderate climates, and they make awesome performance vehicles. In 2021, the Porsche Taycan EV outsold the iconic 911. These cars thrive on acceleration over practicality, and EVs do that extremely well. EVs also make a ton of sense in delivery vehicles. Weight doesn't really matter, and they do a lot of starting and stopping. Think about their regenerative braking. They also have a consistent place to charge every night. Hopefully soon, all of our short-range delivery vehicles will move that direction. I would also like to move to electric in the future. I'm on my 4th year of rooftop solar panels, so I have the source for electricity, and I also have the charging cable in my garage, so I'm ready when it makes sense. Well, this video is getting too long, so we better call it a wrap.
Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Comment below.